Of any fruit, melons may just be the most magical and the most mysterious. There's nothing better than that first bite of perfectly ripe watermelon or cantaloupe fresh off the vine. Its juicy sweetness an escape from the hottest days of summer. But magic like this isn't made on its own. Growing and harvesting a perfectly ripe melon requires persistence and a quest to a special island that is, guess what, in Iowa. Yes, an island right here in Iowa. Don't believe me? Come along on this special field trip to the one and only Muscatine Island, where melons are world famous. Who doesn't love a little sun, sand, and water in the summertime? As it turns out, melons feel the same way we do. That's why they thrive here on Muscatine Island, located on Iowa's eastern border on the banks of the Mississippi River. Because the soil here is sandy and coarse, it drains easily, which helps give melon roots the oxygen they need to thrive. The growing season is also warmer and longer compared to the rest of the state, providing melons the time to develop that sweetness that we all know and love. Now, when I said Muscatine Island, perhaps you were expecting something a little more tropical. It's true that Muscatine we know today doesn't quite resemble an island, but before the Mississippi River changed its course, there very much was one. While it's harder to see, the island's magic still lies beneath the surface, so let's dig a little deeper. The name Muscatine is said to have originated from the Muscatine people, an American Indian tribe that settled here. When Europeans arrived in 1836, they found it hard to grow crops on this land. Frequent floods and the sandy soil resulted in poor harvests, which led them to give the area the less than appetizing nickname Starvation Flats. They learned over time that while many crops struggled, melons curiously didn't. But melons are funny that way. For as much as they seem to thrive in Muscatine's sandy bottomland, they're generally considered by farmers and backyard gardeners to be a challenging food to grow. Shane Merritt, owner of one of the farms you'll be visiting today, will be the first to tell you that melons are fussy.
Melons are a really hard crop to grow. You've got to have the right soil, you've got to have the right watering infrastructure, you've got to be able to control diseases, you've got to be able to control the weeds, and you've got to have a lot of labor to pick it.
Melons like what they like, which apparently means growing conditions that are otherwise less friendly to other fruits and vegetables. After Muscatine farmers realized they could grow melons in abundance, they began shipping off their newfound treasure in railroad cars to faraway locales in 1880, and the demand only grew from there. These melons have earned a sweet reputation throughout Iowa, across the Midwest, and beyond.
Because Muscatine melons in general are famous and there's very few growers anymore, we get people traveling literally from all over the country to come and purchase melons.
The conditions are so ripe for growing melons here that they call Muscatine Melon City. In case you forget the city's claim to fame, a 16,000-pound sculpture sitting in Riverside Park is there to remind you. It's said to be the world's largest watermelon, sitting on the very land that makes these homegrown melons so delicious. Now that you're starting to see the big picture, it's a good time to zoom out and ask ourselves, what even is a melon? What do melons, cucumbers, squashes, and pumpkins have in common? They're all members of the same family, the cucurbit or gourd family. The gourd family is massive, with more than 975 species. Just as with our own extended families of grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, not everyone is going to look exactly the same. But sure enough, there are common threads of characteristics that unite blood relatives. For example, take cucumbers. They share about 95% of their DNA with melons, even though they're green on the outside and inside, and savory instead of sweet. Gourds grow on vines, and they have tendrils, a special kind of stem or leaf that grows in a spiral coil. For some gourds, like cucumbers, these tendrils help the plant climb to better reach sunlight for photosynthesis. Melons, though, are just a smidge heavier than cucumbers, so they hang out on the ground. Another way to tell if a plant is a gourd? Melons and their cucurbit counterparts are flowering plants. Like many, but not all cucurbits, melons produce male and female flowers on the same plant. This fact plays a pretty big role in pollination, which we'll get to later. Now, in the immediate melon family, there are watermelons and then there are muskmelons. When you think of a watermelon, your mind might dream up an image similar to what you've seen in the grocery store. An oblong melon with contrasting stripes that reveal bright red flesh and black seeds on the inside when you cut it open. But the truth is, watermelon can take on all different shapes, colors, and sizes. Some are perfectly spherical, some don't have any stripes at all. And whether you root for Iowa, Iowa State, or UNI, you're guaranteed to find a watermelon that matches your team's colors. Never seen a watermelon with yellow flesh before? At Merritt Farms, they're growing 1,000 yellow watermelons this year.
My son is now 6 and he's very interested in helping on the farm any way he can. He likes to sit there in the winter and help me go through seed catalogs, So we let him pick out something this year, and his crop is a yellow watermelon. The plan was to put about 100 in. He got a little excited and put in 1,000.
As for muskmelons, the name may sound unfamiliar, but you probably know one popular variety, the cantaloupe. You can recognize cantaloupes by their tough, webbed, beige rind and their tender orange flesh. They have a strong, sweet, and floral fragrance, which is how muskmelons got their name, muskmelons. Since we've got a better handle on identifying melons, even when we don't have the signs at the grocery store to tell us where they are, let's head to another farm, the Muscatine Island Research and Demonstration Farm, headed up by Iowa State University, to actually learn how to grow one with the help of agricultural specialist Alexa Marcus. Any great melon starts first as a seed. Yes, even seedless watermelon. We'll get into that. Those seeds like warm soil to germinate, but since the ground can be chilly during those early days of spring, Marcus starts her melon crop indoors. She converts the farm's walk-in cooler into a growth chamber while she uses heating mats and special lights to kick off the growing process. During the germination process, the seeds begin to sprout. It's a crucial time for the plants as they establish their root systems. You'll also start to see plant stem and early leaves push through the soil's surface. About 6 weeks later, in May, the seedlings are ready to be taken to the greenhouse where they can harden off or adapt naturally to the outside environment while they'll be exposed to the elements: wind, full sun, and fluctuating temperatures. Once they've had some time to adjust in the greenhouse, they're ready for the real deal. Marcus transplants them by arranging the young plants into rows, which she covers with black plastic. These covers help keep the moisture in while also fending off weeds. To make watering easier, there's an irrigation system under the plastic, a pair of tubes that deliver water where it's most needed, at the root of each melon plant. Marcus can add liquid fertilizer to the tubes so that the plants get the right nutrients and minerals, like phosphorus, that help the plants develop healthy, large fruit. When we eat that fruit later on, those same nutrients that nourish the plant will nourish us. Phosphorus, for example, helps us repair human tissues and cells. At a certain point, the plants will begin to grow bright yellow flowers. Believe it or not, some of those flowers turn into the melons that we eat. But first, an important process needs to happen: pollination. Remember what I said earlier about melons having male and female flowers on the same plant? For a plant to produce fruit, pollen from the male flowers needs to find its way to the female flowers. So bring on the bees. Bees and other pollinating insects like beetles play a crucial role not only in pollination, but also in putting food on our tables. Some scientists estimate that 1 in every 3 bites of food that we eat exists because of pollinators. Now, you can tell melon flowers apart by looking at the base of each flower. If there's a miniature fruit beneath the flower, that means it's female. And the wild thing about melons, the melon's female flowers are receptive to pollination for just 1 day. If the female flower doesn't get any pollen on that 1 day, it won't bear any fruit. But the more visits a flower gets from pollinators, the more likely it is that the fruit will be larger and ideally shaped. That's why all the farms here in Muscatine have installed honeybee hives. Melons are just one reason why we need to protect our local pollinators. If a female flower has been pollinated, that swollen section underneath the flower will begin to transform into fruit, and at a pretty fast pace. The average watermelon weighs about 20 pounds, and it'll only take about a month to get that way. Come late July, it's time for the hardest but most satisfying part of the growing process: harvesting. At the much larger Merritt Farms, which grows more than 40 acres of crops, that's about the size of 30 professional football fields. The workday during harvest season starts early in the morning, between 5 and 6 a.m. All of those 12, 20, 30-pound watermelons, they're harvested by hand. You don't want to be doing that under the hot sun, though the rain brings its own challenges too.
You don't ever go into the melon crops when they're wet, because if you trample the vines when they're wet, they'll die.
But probably the hardest part of harvesting melons is knowing when a melon is ready, when it's reached that optimal ripeness and sweetness. For as long as it's been cultivated by humans, over some 5,000 years, melons have mystified farmers. It can be so hard to tell when they're ripe. The 16th century French poet Claude Marmot once wrote, "Friends are like melons. Shall I tell you why? To find a good one, you must 100 try." So let's try. Here are some of the indicators of a ripe melon. For watermelon, look first for the tendril near the stem. If it's dead and brown, you probably have got a ripe melon on your hands.
When you see a very yellow spot underneath where it's been resting on the dirt or sand, once that's yellow, that's a good sign that it's ripe. Also, by knocking on it, if it sounds hollow, it is also going to be on the ripe side.
Thumping may not be the most scientific method, but it sure is fun.
When you are knocking on the watermelons, there is a higher pitch that you can hear. That's when they're not ripe, but then it also can play tricks with you because you're like, oh, is that ripe or is it not? So if that's the case, I usually go and look for that tendril to see if it's dry and then knock on it again and see if it sounds hollow. But if it's not, then I'll try to go for that yellow spot at the bottom of it.
Muskmelons and cantaloupe's ripeness indicators are slightly different than those of watermelons. If they have that distinctive sweet aroma and the stem easily pulls away from the melon with hardly any force, they're ready to be harvested. But the surest way to know if a melon is ripe is by cracking one open in the field and taking a bite from the very center. All in a day's work. Beyond the fields and behind the scenes, there's even more that goes on a research farm like the one in Muscatine. Melons are not only magical because of how they grow from a tiny seed to a huge fruit, but also because of how we breed them. Horticulturists, who are experts who work to improve the growth of plants, experiment to see if they can create new varieties of melons. They do this by cross-pollinating 2 different types of melon plants with the hopes of a new hybrid fruit that will have the most desirable qualities of each parent plant. See, watermelons aren't merely watermelons. There are many different varieties. You've got your crimson sweet, your royal sweet, your sweet beauty, your yellow baby, your crunchy red, and so many other varieties, all designed by humans with taste, texture, and disease resistance in mind. That's how seedless watermelon came to be. Now, how do you get a seedless watermelon when it doesn't produce any viable seeds? See, melons, like humans and all living organisms, have chromosomes, the things that contain DNA and make us who we are. A naturally grown watermelon plant with seeds has 2 sets of chromosomes per cell. But when horticulturists treat the watermelon with a special organic compound called colchicine, they can produce a watermelon that has 4 chromosomes per cell. Now, cross-pollinate a plant with 2 chromosomes and a plant with 4 chromosomes, and you get a watermelon with 3 sets of chromosomes. With an odd number of chromosomes, these melons are sterile and can't produce a black mature seed, making them seedless. Whew, that's a lot of science. We'll leave the melon wizardry up to Marcus and her colleagues today and just appreciate the fact that we don't have to fuss over spitting out our seeds when we eat watermelon these days. Seedless watermelon only came into existence about a half a century ago, and now consumers' demand for them couldn't be greater. With so many options of melons to choose from, you're bound to find one that you like. If you tried watermelon or cantaloupe from the grocery store before and it wasn't your favorite, don't be afraid to try again when you spot a local farm stand like Merritt's. Local farms often stock more varieties than what you'd see in a grocery store bin. And because that local melon was likely picked the same day, just a few feet from where you're standing, you'll notice that it may be sweeter and fresher than what you've had before. Now, as big as they are, melons are definitely a fruit that was meant to be shared. They're enjoyable when eaten right off the rind, but the next time your family is cooking together, try getting a little creative. You can chop up watermelon for a salad, tossing it with different ingredients like lime juice or zest, or diced jalapeno for a little spice. Since watermelon is 92% water, it's also a great way to stay hydrated, so you can blend it into juice if you've got some left over. Some people even enjoy grilling big slices of watermelon and cantaloupe. No matter how you eat a melon, never forget the magic and care that went into growing it. Here in Muscatine, Iowa, once called the melon garden spot of the world, magic and melons abound.